Hi everyone, my name is Gonzalo Tudela. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Vandrico Solutions. And a little bit of history of myself. I grew up in a mining family. My mother and father used to talk about people like Robert Friedland and the Voisey Bay discovery and things at Hemlo and the Gold Corp Challenge with McEwen. So I kind of heard that through the tables and everything. I grew up and I was always wondering, how can I get into mining? So I luckily and serendipitously got in about 2008. Nice little time to get into the markets coming up. Started working with juniors in the investor relations side. Then I ended up working at Gold Corp at the Red Lake mine. And I started realizing that there's kind of a miss between technology where it is today and where mining is today at that time. And I still see that. So really quickly, today's topic is about what happens when traditional industries like mining try agile methods. So how many people are familiar with what agile is? 1, 2, 3, okay. My prediction is this year is the year mining is really going to hear about agile because of what Barrick's been doing. Barrick, if you look at, I think it's Michelle Ash, they're starting to call her Agile Ash. Pay attention because there's $100 million being invested and it's being done in an agile way. So the three things that I'm talking about is what is agile? Why is it important? Why does it matter to mining? We're going to do a case study of one of the things that we did with one of our clients in the underground mine in Utah. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the technology of how we got there. So first off, really agile applies to software. It applies to a form of project management for building software. And it's basically stating that you want to create small increments, small time-boxed increments, and deliver something to the user as quick as possible. And what I mean by quick as possible is you're trying to get value in the hands of someone, whether it's your foreman who needs a piece of technology to better communicate, or whether it is the back-end guys who are trying to understand what's happening in the whole mine, in as fast as possible and start getting feedback as to whether or not it was valuable. And the reason that this is different is because if you look at something like the waterfall methodology, it's what mining is very typically used to. Long cycles to plan, long cycles of building, ramping up to commercial production, and so you're very used to this cycle of first A, then B, then C. With Agile, it's talking about, instead of trying to figure out how you get everything done and to getting it done perfectly, just figure out one small piece and get it done as soon as possible. And probably the biggest example that we're seeing of this in traditional industries is SpaceX versus the old school NASA way. So SpaceX didn't walk out and say, we're going to plan to land a rocket from space on a barge in the middle of the ocean. They didn't plan to do that. They started and then they said, let's get a small rocket 10 feet off the ground and land again. Then let's get it 12 stories off the ground. Then let's get it to orbit. Let's get it to land on ground. Then let's get it to land on the ocean. Small increments, okay? And the reason it makes a big difference, especially when it comes around innovation, is where when you start getting into the build phase and you realize technology is not possible, or you start realizing the users are not going to accept this, it starts to change the plan. You have to go one step and it takes longer and longer and longer before you actually get to learn something. Whereas with Agile, you're always paying attention and expecting that change will happen. This is innovation. You're trying things that have never been done before. So there's 4 pillars to being valuable in terms of how Agile is done. And the first one is it's all about the people instead of the process. It's all about getting feedback from who is actually the end user and using it versus trying to follow the documentation or to follow the step-by-step procedure. The second piece is it's about delivering something that works versus trying to over-document how it works, okay? Third piece, and this is probably the most important lesson that we've learned, is customer collaboration is critical. We've spent more time discussing how a contract should lay out than actually getting it to value on site. And it's funny because we've seen these RFI processes that take, we're looking at one in Mongolia right now and we're 12 months in. It's another 6 or another 12, who knows, before we'll start getting some feedback. And the reality is we could have started to increase production in less than a month. So the next piece is responding to change. If you're going to be innovating and if you're really truly working on this, Agile is going to allow you to do that. So the proof is in the pudding. So what we're seeing here is from the Standish group, there's 50,000 IT projects that have been analyzed over the last 4 years, 2011 to 2015, and it's various success rates in sizes of projects. So a small project would be under $1 million, medium project would be 1 to 2.5, 1 to 3, and large projects would be above that. But overall, what we're seeing is that Agile is having a much higher success rate than waterfall methodology. We're also seeing a significantly lower failure rate. And challenge is basically it didn't meet the time that it was expected to be launched by. It went over budget, or they were failure to reach the scope. Okay? So, in addition to that, we're also seeing that if you're going to be innovating in terms of IT projects, you really should try and focus on small to moderate size. That's where you're going to find the highest chance of success in your innovation. So what we're seeing is about 62% of the projects globally are being successful when they're less than $1 million, and they're trying to innovate through that. The higher failure rate, or the highest failure rate, is going to be around the medium to large size. So again, why I want to hammer on this with regards to innovation is what we have here is a little bit of a rubric that's saying the requirements or the problem you're trying to solve is either known or unknown, and the technology is either you know it's going to solve it or it's not going to solve it. So if you have a very simple problem where you know what you need to fix, you know that technology can do it, I need an email server as an example, then you can use something like a waterfall methodology. But when you're in the area of uncertainty, where you don't know whether or not this technology or whether this sensor is going to be able to measure your water filtration and whether or not it's going to be able to stream to my computer or my phone, that's more of the complex and unknown area, then you're heading towards Agile. Second thing is when you're trying new technology where results are going to be unpredictable. But lastly, and I want to harp on this one, is when you're working with startups. And the reason I want to say when you're working with startups is the startup community is really really tries to get companies off the ground and is willing to do anything in terms of that collaboration. And they will adapt and change a product in the first 3 years of their life to meet your needs. So if you are able to collaborate with them and you're able to work in increments and give them user feedback in 2-week increments, that product is going to be a higher chance of adoption because your users are the ones who are helping guide the requirements, and it's going to have a higher chance of success. So why Agile matters to mining? So as I looked at everything that's happening in the industry, I've seen that innovation is a core value of some of the world-leading mining companies. You look at Goldcorp, you look at Barrick, you look at McEwen, you look at everyone, and they're all talking about innovation. And Agile projects are designed for just that. The second thing is you're starting to see digital transformation being at the center of the strategic discussions. You see that specifically with a company like Barrick. And really when you're starting to head towards that zone, it really is beneficial to start thinking Agile. And we know this through and through, is there's an aging workforce, we have lower grades, it's harder to find things. CSR and environmental stewardship, it's always getting harder. So I see this call to innovation happening. And really, this is why it matters. If you haven't used Agile before, you're really losing out. So again, the keys to success here, before I start talking about a case study we did in mining, is it's all about time box. So you got to limit your scope and create, I want to have something in the hands of someone in 2 weeks or a month. Very limited time box. Right? Second piece is you have to be realistic about what can be completed in that 2-week time frame. And the third piece is you have to be willing to give honest user feedback if they like it or if they hate it. If they hate it, if it's not working, if it's not providing value, axe it. You only invested 2 weeks. Doesn't matter. Right? But you have to be honest with the user feedback. You have to talk to the people who are actually going to use the product. And lastly is you have to deliver working software and deliver it quickly. Okay? Sorry. And you want to leverage fit for purpose platforms. You're going to look for platforms that can allow you to scale, something like a web-based platform. So, before I jump in here, does anyone have any questions about Agile? Does everyone think they got it fully clear? I didn't rip through it too fast, a little bit? It's just a different way of thinking about how you run the project. All right, so Vandrico, very early on, it was started in 2013 when I got involved, and we wanted to get into mining very desperately. We saw that the prices were going down. We kept saying, we are willing to help, and we weren't able to break through. And the reason we weren't able to break through is we were actually charging too little. We found about 18 months later, when we went to another company, we added a zero and they took it right away. And I'm sorry to say this to the industry, but it's the truth. It's what actually happened to us. But in the meantime, we did projects with Canada Post, we did projects with Whistler Blackcomb, we did projects with TELUS, we did projects with Finning International, and that kind of all built a technology that allowed us to adapt, and it was always with the mining's mindset in mind. I still believe that mining is a fantastic industry. I have a romantic attachment to it, and here's what happened when we were able to do it. So the first piece is that as we started building the technology, we had this thesis around wearable technology. If we could provide a worker with exactly the right information at the moment that they needed it, personalized, individualized, we could not only increase safety, we could potentially save lives, we can increase production, and we theoretically should be able to optimize the flow of work management in the field at a mine. And so when we did this project with Whistler Blackcomb, what we ended up doing was connecting the lifts to the mechanics via a watch. So when a lift was a maintenance or mechanic fault, aka it was something like too much wind or you need to add more tension, there was basically when a fault was tripped and only a trained, certified, and qualified mechanic could reset that switch and make that adjustment. You had people that were on the lift, and you wanted to get there as fast as possible. So what we ended up doing was connecting it to a watch and determining in real time where the closest trained, authorized mechanic was, and the second that lift went down, it would automatically trigger, hey, you gotta go fix this. And that was able to shorten the time frame of people stuck on lifts, which was a very critical thing. And it sounds like, well, how do you connect a lift to a watch? And that's a little bit of the underlying technology of connecting SCADA to modern computing. But the same thesis we had was, well, what about underground mining? If a rock bolt is starting to determine that there's seismic activity, or if there's carbon monoxide or unsafe gases, if there's vehicles in there, why can't we alert people in the same possible way? The stakes are much higher. So we came to the company with this concept first. And they said, that's great, let's head in that direction. And we said, hold on, we have this, but the way that we're going to operate is in an agile manner. So let's talk to your guys and let's see what we need first. So we need a map. So we limited the scope and we said one level of the mine, 3D map, browser-based. So that means you can open up a Google Chrome browser on any computer. You don't need to actually install any programs on those computers, and you automatically have your 3D map. Can you see that, or is it a little too bright? Simple. So that's the first increment. Great, looks like our map. That's not really valuable. Give me something else. Well, what do you have? Well, before we get to the people, I want to see where my vehicles are. So we used the AeroScout tags that they already had and just connected this through. And now we have real-time view of where all of their vehicles are. So you can open up a tablet, and you can look at this and say, oh, okay, well, there's my vehicles. So now all of a sudden the maintenance people and the geologists and everyone's saying, hey, I need to find the UTV, or hey, I need to find this particular vehicle. Can I have search? And can I take this underground? So all of a sudden, you start adding a search bar, so now you can more easily find the particular vehicle, the particular serial number, and you change the colors, and now you can take this visible underground without killing your eyes. And you see how the increment just starts adding value. And we're not even to the thesis yet. If we put an entire waterfall approach of how we're going to connect a rock bolt to a watch and just focused on that, we weren't listening to the users. So now we have search, 3D map, underground, real-time location. Next question is, what about people? And since the actual users underground, the people were using this map to manage where the assets were, they asked us, hey, can you show me where my team is? And the team said, I feel safer if my boss and I could communicate this way? So then you just add people. Again, we haven't changed much. The AeroScout tags are already there. Right? We added the watches later. So then he said, well, if we know where our people are, and if we know where our vehicles are, why don't we just have a digital zone board? Except we could actually user define where and how these zones are configured. So we know that this is the common axis descent, this is the northwest drainage gallery, southwest drainage gallery, and various. And then all of a sudden you have a digital tag board. And we're not even 6 weeks into the project. So all of this is done in less than 3 months. We're not done yet. What about our cameras? Can we get a live video feed of our cameras so that I can see what's going on and give me better situational awareness of what's happening as I'm looking underground? Yeah, of course. What about two-way messaging? Now that we're going to put workers on this watch, we're going to put watch on workers, it may or may not be the right thing. And that's the thing about innovation. A watch is the hypothesis. As long as you deliver it, you're going to learn. And we learned the watch at this time doesn't make sense. They prefer a tablet on the vehicle or a phone. And you can lock all that down, and that's not to worry. But the watch was a hypothesis. So then we started saying, well, what about two-way messaging? So that we could send information to and from people. And then what about the sensors? What about the carbon monoxide, the sulfur dioxide, diesel particulate matter? What about the rock seismic activity? What about an activity pane? And you can see as the product and as the software starts evolving, it's still 1 week, 2 week increments, delivering piece by piece, feature by feature. And I'm not going through all the features that were found, but I'm going through the methodology of how we learned and listened to people, and how as every piece of feedback that they gave helped to steer what was happening next, and they actually found and only gave things they needed to do their job. People are used to Facebook, now you have a Facebook feed. If you look at this as like a safety audit, I know which person was where when there was X sensor telling me what. Then we came full circle all the way back after all this to the automated safety alerts. So basically when this sensor reaches above a certain threshold, an alert is set for the local area, and as people are entered, they are alerted, this is an unsafe zone, please turn around. It's like a virtual barricade. Everyone knows that you put your physical barricades and you hope it's still there. Exactly. You're asking, you're like, guys, when you move that barricade for whatever reason, you shouldn't touch it, it's there for a reason. People move it. Now there's a record of who is in that area or entered that area past that. That's important. So it finally came full circle all the way through this. It's 3 months. And we're just getting started, is the way that I like to put it. The idea was this, and all of a sudden the users turned it into something else. And now there's this fundamental foundation for the mining industry to keep building upon it. So a couple things we learned on this one and working with mining industry. The first one is that collaboration is critical success. So we set a call every Thursday. We were on a call with a user every Thursday saying, hey, here it is, here's the mock-up, here's what we're doing. And every week there was a deliverable. And that deliverable was being fed right in, and we adopted it. I mean, there were ideas, we tried, didn't work, we threw it out, tried something else, didn't work, threw it out, but it didn't matter, it was just a week. You just keep going, time boxed. So collaboration is critical. If you guys want to see improvements, give startups your access and help them out. They will deliver. Second one is that not all progress needed to be made on site. So what I mean by that is we did 3 site visits during the 3 months. Once to first get the first user one, partway through to kind of really test a few other use cases out and start expanding our understanding. And then third, to really make sure it was working and they can keep using it. So not all progress needed to be made on site, meaning we were still able to iterate. Because of the flow of virtual private networks and the cloud, you can send information there and you can update, and you can do it in a secure way. So you can still progress off-site. Last one was, and this was probably the best one for us, user adoption was smoother. So instead of saying, hey, we're going to implement this new grand system, here you go, use SAP, It's, hey guys, we understand you have this problem. Does that help? And then you have your foremen who are telling their guys, hey man, you tell me an idea, we'll get it in there. And you have this user adoption, user acceptance built right into your innovation. It's fantastic. Last thing is we tried different cycles. 14 days was about right for us. So if you had to pick a time box that makes sense where you can make a meaningful impact on a mine, every 14 days you should be able to install new software and test a new integration or test an element on that. Lastly was if you were to think about, and this isn't against anything in the mining industry, but if you think about, there's sort of two ways you can have applications. You can have application you have to install on your computer, like a Microsoft Word or an Excel, right? You can install that application, or Outlook. Or you can have something called a browser-based application. So a browser-based application is saying it's a program that you can open using Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Firefox. That's browser-based, where the entire user interface is in the browser. You don't need internet connection. That's irrelevant. You can have a server connection. That's a technical piece. That's not the problem. But what that means is that you can test on different modals and different mediums like laptops and iPads and all those things without ever installing anything else. That helps with Agile. So that was another huge lesson.